There is a kind of pain in this world that has no name, a pain that cannot be wrapped in words, a pain that tears the soul in a way only those who have truly lived it can understand. It is the pain of losing a child. Antonia Acutis came to know this pain suddenly and violently when Carlo, her only 15-year-old son, passed away. It was not an accident, but a lightning-fast leukemia that took his life in just a few days. Imagine it, mother or father, seeing your child healthy one week and gone the next, as if the ground gives way beneath your feet and you fall into a bottomless abyss. The faith Antonia had nurtured, the spirituality she tried to live by, all of it seemed to collapse in that moment. The prayers that once flowed easily now got stuck in her throat, mixed with tears that refused to stop. Carlo was her light, her reason for living, that smile that could soften even the hardest day. The home that had once been filled with Carlo's contagious joy now echoed with a deafening silence. Every corner held a memory. The computer where he built websites about Eucharistic miracles, the Bible filled with his notes, the photos from church where he took part with such enthusiasm. Antonia found herself staring at these things, feeling a mix of love and anguish so strong it took her breath away. How do you go on when the meaning of life has simply left? How do you get up every day knowing you will never again see that face or hear the voice calling out "Mom"? Grief is a quiet monster that eats you from the inside, turning days into fog and nights into endless nightmares. And for a mother for whom Christianity had always been the foundation, this pain was accompanied by a deep spiritual disorientation, as if God himself had turned away. In the first days after Carlo's death, Antonia could barely get out of bed. People came with comforting words, quoted scripture, spoke about God's plan, about Carlo being in a better place, but to her it all sounded empty. How can it be better if he's not with me? She thought in silence. Her body functioned on pure autopilot, but her soul was shattered into a million pieces. She tried to cling to religion, to the teachings Carlo loved so much, but nothing seemed to make sense anymore. Testimonies of faith that once inspired her now felt distant, as if they came from people who had never lived what she was living. This suffering was hers alone, unique, unbearable, and deep in her heart, one question kept pounding, a question she was afraid to say out loud, yet which screamed within her. Why? And that question, that why, rising from the deepest part of her being, was not hers alone. It is the question millions of people ask when pain knocks at the door without warning. Why does God allow us to suffer? Why, if he is love, does he allow a mother to lose her child? Why, if Carlo was such a good, devoted, radiant boy, did he have to leave so early? These questions are not new. They have been with humanity from the beginning. In the Bible there is Job, a righteous man who lost everything and cried out to God, asking about the meaning of his suffering. There is Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, who had to watch her son die on the cross in the most cruel way. The mystery of suffering is one of the hardest questions of faith, and there are no easy or fully satisfying answers for the human heart. Antonia was torn between faith and reason, between trust and doubt. Her daily prayer time became an inner battlefield. She opened the Bible searching for comfort, but the words felt blurred and far away. In church, during sermons, she heard about God's faithfulness, about his plan for everything, but her heart screamed that no plan could justify losing Carlo. The spirituality she had built over years seemed too fragile to carry the weight of this loss. Where was God when Carlo was suffering? Where was he when she was on her knees begging for a miracle? These questions are not signs of a lack of faith. They are signs of brutal honesty in the face of reality. And it is often in this honesty, in this desperate cry, that the path of transformation begins. Suffering, as incomprehensible as it is, has a strange ability to open us to dimensions of reality we never noticed before. It is not that pain is good, or that God sends it to teach us a lesson, as if he were a cruel teacher. Rather, pain can shatter the superficial layers of our lives and lead us toward a deeper encounter with truth, with ourselves, and paradoxically, with God. Antonia did not know it then, but her question, why, was not meant to remain unanswered. Not an intellectual answer that explains everything, but a lived answer, one that would come slowly like dawn gently pushing back the darkness of night. And that answer had much to do with who Carlo had been in life, with the light that shone through his short but intense 15 years, because Carlo Acutis was not an ordinary teenager. While most kids his age were absorbed in video games, social media, and typical teenage distractions, Carlo discovered something that fascinated him far more: the Eucharist. From a very young age, he showed an extraordinary devotion to the real presence of Jesus in the consecrated bread and wine. It was not a piety imposed by his parents or the church, but something that flowed naturally from his heart. At 7 years old, he asked for his first communion, and from that moment on, he attended Mass every single day. Yes, every day. In a world where many Christians go to church once a month or only at Christmas, this boy went daily, because that is where he found the meaning of his life. And yet Carlo was not a disconnected, overly pious child locked inside a religious bubble. Quite the opposite. He was a modern kid with a sense of humor, a love for technology and video games, playing soccer with friends and fully living his teenage years. The difference was that he found balance between enjoying life and feeding his soul. His mother recalls that Carlo often repeated a phrase, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." While others searched for happiness in passing things, Carlo found the source of true joy, and what is most remarkable is that he did not keep this treasure to himself. He had a burning desire to share it with the world, especially with young Christians of his generation, who often had no idea of the depth of this spiritual reality. This is where Carlo's genius truly shone. At just 11 years old, he taught himself computer programming and decided to use his technological skills for evangelization. He created a virtual exhibition cataloging all the Eucharistic miracles recognized by the Church throughout history. It was an ambitious project, requiring research, website design, the gathering of historical data and testimonies of faith from people who had experienced these miracles. Carlo spent hours at the computer not chatting or watching meaningless videos, but building something that could draw people closer to God. His exhibition traveled the world, was displayed in parishes on every continent, and touched the hearts of millions. Think about that. A teenager using Instagram, YouTube, and technology, not to feed his ego or chase fame, but to bring the gospel to where people are. Carlo's prayer life was just as striking. He not only attended daily Mass, but also prayed the Rosary, adored the Blessed Sacrament, and cultivated a deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary. His room held religious images, but also posters of his favorite teams and all the things typical of a normal teenager. Carlo taught us something essential. Holiness is not opposed to everyday life, to joy, to being young and enjoying life. Holiness means living every moment with love, with purpose, with the awareness that every action, even the smallest one, can be offered to God. While many sermons portray faith as something solemn and boring, Carlo showed that authentic faith is the most exciting thing of all, because it connects us to the ultimate meaning of existence. His spirituality was not limited to personal practices. Carlo had an extraordinary social heart. He cared for the poor, helped homeless people he met on the streets, defended classmates who were bullied, and treated everyone with a dignity and respect that surprised those around him. He did not do this for attention or praise, but because his adoration of God naturally overflowed into love of neighbor. During one Bible meeting, he said a line that everyone remembered: "We are all born as originals, but many die as photocopies." He spoke about authenticity, about not letting the world decide who we should be, but discovering our own unique calling and living it boldly. When Carlo fell ill with leukemia, his faith did not weaken. In his final days, surrounded by tubes and machines in the hospital, he offered his suffering for the Pope, for the Church, and for the young people of the world. Imagine that, a 15-year-old boy dying, and instead of complaining or asking, "Why me?" thinking of others, interceding, praying. His last request was to be buried in Assisi, the city of St. Francis, because he deeply loved Franciscan spirituality and its simplicity and love for creation. On October 12, 2006, Carlo left this world, leaving an immense emptiness in his family, but also a spiritual legacy that was only beginning to unfold. Because Carlo's death, as painfully devastating as it was for those who loved him, was not the end of his story. In a mysterious way, it was the beginning of something far greater. Here, faith reveals a truth that completely contradicts human logic. Sometimes an early death is not the end of a mission, but the beginning of a greater one. In Carlo's case, his passing at 15, when his whole life lay ahead of him, when he could have done so much, when his parents dreamed of seeing him grown, married, with children, became the starting point of a global impact he likely would never have reached had he lived. It is as if God said, "Carlo, your time on earth is over, but your mission is just beginning." And what a mission it was. After his death, testimonies from people touched by his life multiplied rapidly. His story spread online and through social media, reaching exactly those he longed to reach: young people, thousands of teenagers and young Christians who felt alone in their faith, who believed it was impossible to be holy in the modern world, that you had to choose between fully living your youth and being religious, found a model in Carlo. Here was a boy just like them, playing PlayStation, surfing the internet, laughing, living, and at the same time deeply connected to God. Carlo shattered the stereotype of the boring saint. He showed that holiness is not reserved for monks in monasteries, but for anyone who chooses to live with love, purpose, and consistency between what they believe and how they live. His words, "To always be united with Jesus, this is my life plan," became a slogan for thousands of young people around the world. In Spain, Latin America, Asia, Africa, Carlo's light began to shine where no one expected it. Recognizing this impact and the testimony of his extraordinary life, the Catholic Church began his beatification process. In October 2020, just 14 years after his death, Carlo Acutis was declared blessed. He is one of the youngest saints of the modern era and the first millennial to be raised to the altars. His incorrupt body rests in Assisi and has become a place of pilgrimage for thousands who come to ask for his intercession, to give thanks, or simply to get to know this young man who revolutionized the way spirituality is lived in the 21st century. The social media Carlo loved is now filled with the hashtag Carlo Acutis. Videos about his life gather millions of views, and his exhibition on Eucharistic miracles continues to be shown in parishes around the world. Carlo's death did not extinguish his light, it multiplied it endlessly. For Antonia, understanding all of this was neither immediate nor easy. In the first months after Carlo's death, she was submerged in pain so deep she could see nothing beyond her loss. Grieving with faith does not mean the absence of suffering. It means suffering with a different perspective, but the pain remains real, sharp, unavoidable. Antonia cried every day. There were moments when the faith Carlo had ignited in her felt insufficient to hold her up. The hardest times were early mornings, when the silence of the house reminded her that Carlo was gone. She would get up, go into his room, and stand there surrounded by his belongings, feeling her heart break over and over again. Friends and family tried to comfort her, but there are pains that words cannot soothe. Yet something strange began to happen within Antonia. Despite the unbearable pain, despite tears soaking her pillow every night, there were moments when she felt an unexplainable peace. The suffering did not disappear, but within it appeared something like hope. It was as if two realities coexisted in her heart: the human devastation of losing her son, and a spiritual certainty that Carlo was well, that his mission continued, that God had not abandoned her family. This paradox is one of the deepest mysteries of Christian faith. It is not that religion removes pain or prayer dries every tear. It is that in the middle of the storm, there is an anchor that keeps you from being completely swept away. Antonia held on to her prayer time, even when she had no desire to open the Bible. She went to church, even when the services and homilies felt disconnected from her pain. She prayed, though her prayers were often little more than silent cries, "Help me keep living." This is important to understand. Enduring faith is not the kind that is always joyful and full of praise songs. Enduring faith is the kind that keeps going when everything feels dark, that holds on to God even when He seems silent, that says, "I don't understand anything, but I still trust," even if that trust is more an act of will than a feeling. Antonia was living what the mystics call the dark night of the soul, a time when God seems absent, when heaven feels closed, yet it is precisely then that the deepest transformation takes place. During those months of intense grief, Antonia deepened her relationship with the Virgin Mary in a way she had never known before. And it makes sense, doesn't it? If anyone could understand what Antonia was going through, it was Mary, the mother who watched her son die in the most cruel way. Antonia began praying the rosary with a new intensity, not as a religious duty, but as an intimate conversation with another mother who had walked the same path. In those moments of prayer, meditating on the sorrowful mysteries of Jesus' life, Antonia felt that Mary was beside her, crying with her, holding her up when her strength failed. Marian devotion became her lifeline, the channel through which divine consolation reached her broken heart. Mary did not take Antonia's pain away, but she taught her how to carry it. She showed her that it is possible to live with a heart pierced by a sword and still love, still believe, still hope. In the Bible, when Simeon prophesies to Mary that a sword will pierce your soul, he foretells the suffering of every mother who sees her child in pain, especially when that child dies before her. Antonia came to understand that her pain was not something to quickly overcome or hide in order to appear strong in faith. Her pain was legitimate, human, part of the path of authentic Christianity. And Mary, by her example of fidelity at the foot of the cross, showed her that you can be broken and still not lose hope. You can weep and still trust in God's plan. The transformation taking place in Antonia's heart through this relationship with Mary was profound. Slowly, she began to look at her pain in a new light. It was not that the suffering diminished, but that she began to see meaning in it, a purpose. She remembered Carlo's special devotion to Mary, how he prayed the rosary every day, how he called her my blue mother. Now Antonia felt that this same mother was caring for Carlo in eternity and caring for her here on earth. The testimonies of faith that began reaching her, stories of people whose lives were changed after learning about Carlo, made her think, maybe, just maybe, something bigger is happening than what the eyes can see. And then, when Antonia least expected it, something extraordinary happened. After months immersed in the darkest grief, after endless nights of tears and questions about whether she would ever feel whole again, she discovered she was pregnant, and not with one child, but with twins. The news shook her to the core. It was as if the sky, closed for so long, suddenly opened and flooded her life with blinding light. Antonia, who had lost her only son, was now going to become the mother of 2 children at once. God's mathematics is mysterious. He does not give back what we lost in the same form, but multiplies, transforms, and renews in ways we could never imagine. The twin pregnancy after Carlo's death was a tangible sign to Antonia that God had not forgotten her. It was not that the twins replaced Carlo, because no one can be replaced. Each person is unique and irreplaceable. It was more as if God were saying, Antonia, I know your pain is immense. I know Carlo's loss left a void nothing can fill. But look, I am still here and I still have new life for you, new hope, a future to build with you. When Antonia felt the gentle kicks of the babies in her womb, she cried. But now her tears were a mix of sorrow for Carlo and joy for those yet to come. It was like living in 2 worlds at once, a world of loss and a world of hope, both present in her heart. When Michelle and Francesca were born, Antonia experienced one of those paradoxes that only faith can hold. She was happy, deeply happy, holding the 2 little ones in her arms, being an active mother again, caring for, feeding, and cuddling her children. And at the same time, every time she looked at them, she thought of Carlo. Had Carlo met his younger siblings in heaven before they were born? Had he interceded for them? Antonia began to believe that he had, that Carlo was somehow involved in this miracle. The birth of the twins did not erase the pain of losing Carlo, but it gave her a new purpose, a new reason to get up every morning with hope. It was as if God was saying, life goes on, Antonia. Love endures. I am still creating, renewing, and multiplying. The story of twins Michelle and Francesca quickly became a powerful testimony within the Christian community. People saw in them a sign of God's faithfulness, of how he can bring life out of death, hope out of despair, joy out of the deepest grief. It was not magic, nor a sudden wave of the hand that made everything fine. The pain of losing Carlo was still there and likely would remain for a lifetime. But something more had appeared. Gratitude, awe, a deeper understanding that God's ways are truly mysterious, yet profoundly loving. The twins were a literal multiplication of life, a reminder that God is a God of abundant life, even as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And yet, the story did not end there. While Antonia was living this renewal through the birth of the twins, something else was happening in the world. Testimonies of miracles attributed to Carlo's intercession began to multiply. People prayed through him and spoke of unexplained healings, deep conversions, religious vocations born after discovering his story. One of the most well-documented cases was the healing of a Brazilian child suffering from a serious pancreatic condition. Doctors had given a very pessimistic diagnosis, but the family began praying through the intercession of Carlo Acutis. In an inexplicable way, the child was completely healed, without medical intervention, without scientific explanation. This miracle was one of those carefully examined by the Church during Carlo's beatification process. Each testimony that reached Antonia was like balm for her heart. It did not remove the pain of Carlo's physical absence, but it strengthened her in something she was beginning to believe with her whole heart. Carlo had not truly left. He was still alive, not only in memory but in a real, active and powerful way, within the communion of saints. This is one of the most beautiful and comforting truths of Christianity. Death is not the end. It is a passage. Those who have gone before us do not abandon us. They accompany us in a different way, interceding for us from heaven. Carlo had said during his life that he wanted to spend his heaven doing good on earth, and he kept that promise in an astonishing way. Understanding the communion of saints completely changed the way Antonia lived her grief. She no longer felt that Carlo was dead in the sense of total absence. She felt his spiritual presence, sensed that he was acting and interceding. When she read testimonies of young people returning to faith after learning Carlo's story, when she saw how his exhibition on Eucharistic miracles continued to touch hearts around the world, when she heard of dramatic conversions inspired by him, she understood that her son's mission was just beginning. It was as if Carlo had to leave this world in order to reach millions he could never have reached otherwise. This reality of the communion of saints is not just a beautiful doctrine. It is a lived experience for those who believe. It means a real bond between those in heaven and those still walking on earth. It means we can ask them for intercession, for help, for companionship in our struggles. For Antonia, it meant she could talk to Carlo, ask him to care for his younger siblings, to intercede for the family, and to continue his mission of evangelizing young people. And the fruits were visible. Bible groups in parishes using Carlo's life as an example, young Christian communities inspired by him to live their faith authentically, priestly and religious vocations born from his witness. Seen from this perspective, Carlo's death was not a senseless tragedy, but part of a divine plan that bore abundant fruit.